what can happen. Unemployment's going to go up under any circumstances. I mean, the 6.1 is going to go higher. But whether it goes and quits at 7 or whether it quits at 10 or 11 or 12 depends on, among other things, the wisdom of Congress and then the wisdom of, in terms of carrying out the plan that Congress authorizes.
Would you say that this plan, which you have argued very strongly the Senate ought to pass and the House ought to pass, is simply the plan that we have, and I don't have a better idea, but it's essential for the confidence of the nation and the system?
Yeah, and I just worry about whether it's enough. But I think it is.
What?
Every day that goes by, I mean, if you don't react to Pearl Harbor for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you are behind in the war that you otherwise would have fought. But it's very important that the determination of the U.S. Congress to do what is needed be made evident this week and by the actions of most of the members. I mean, you're not going to get total assent.
What makes you confident that this plan will work?
Well, I think I don't think you could have a better Secretary of the Treasury than Hank Paulson. I mean, he is in there at the wrong time. He probably shouldn't have taken the job. He's a friend of mine, but he knows markets. He knows how corporations work. He knows money, and he's got the interest of the country at heart. And so you've got the right person. You've got a wonderful person with Sheila Bair. Most of the viewers have never heard of Sheila Bair. Sheila Bair, in the last 2 weeks, has taken 8% of the deposits in the United States and seamlessly moved those over to sound institutions, which in turn have gotten more capital into them. It's been a magnificent job. 8% of the deposits in the United States, tens of millions of depositors, and nobody's ever heard of her. She'll never get a golden parachute or any severance pay or anything. She's done a great job. We've got some great public servants. We have, I think, the right people in there to get the job done, and then they need more tools.
And those more tools might be, in addition to what's in this plan?
Well, they need plenty of money, and they really need plenty of flexibility to carry out this plan. They also need, in my view, to very much tie it to market prices. I have said, Charlie, that the $700 billion, if they buy mortgage-related securities or mortgages themselves at current market prices, they're going to make money over time because the United States government has staying power and it has a low cost of borrowing. And if I could take 1% of that $700 billion pot and take the gain or loss from it and be their partner, and they would buy the stuff at market, I'd make a lot of money. Yeah. No, you have hedge funds and people like that buying these assets to yield 15 or 20%. I mean, that's the buyer for these people that are trying to unload them. The U.S. Treasury has got borrowing costs like nobody else has. They can borrow basically unlimited amounts. They can stay there for years and years. These assets will be worth more money over time. So when Merrill Lynch sells a bunch of mortgage-related assets at 22 cents on the dollar like they did a month or so ago, the buyer of those is going to make money, and he's going to make a lot more money if it happens to be an institution like the U.S. government, which has very, very cheap borrowing costs.
So you are saying to those taxpayers who are worried about what's going to happen to $700 billion, chances are good that when these securities are purchased and sold, you'll get a lot of your money back.
I think
or all of your money back, and maybe something else.
I would bet on it. I mean, if I got a chance to take 1% of the deal, either way, I would make that bet. Well, when Berkshire Hathaway's laid out $3 billion for GE today, we didn't spend it. We invested it. When the federal government buys the mortgages, they're not spending it, they're investing it. Now, they're investing it in distressed-type assets, but they're buying them at distressed prices if they buy them at market. It's the kind of stuff I love to do. I just don't have $700 billion. Maybe we could go in it together. With your money and my brains, there's no telling how far we can go.
Whatever. I'll take the deal, whatever you want to do. There is this, though, in terms of alternatives. Some people have suggested, for example, that why isn't America doing what Berkshire Hathaway is doing? Why isn't that a better deal for America?
I don't think it would be crazy to have a model or an entity model on the Reconstruction Finance Corp. That goes back to 1932, although it was really implemented in 33 under Jesse Jones. And it invested in mostly banks initially and preferred stock and that sort of thing. So there are two things needed in the system. The one that's needed overwhelmingly is liquidity. I mean, when people are trying to deleverage, there has to be somebody there to buy. And they don't have to buy it at fancy prices, but to buy. And then there's also a capital problem with some of the institutions. We have provided capital here with a couple of institutions recently. The federal government did that in the 30s through the RFC, and I think there could well be a proper role for government in that now.
Would that have been a better idea today?
It wouldn't have been big enough today. And it wouldn't have been fat. You couldn't have, if you'd set up an RFC today and you gave them $100 billion to invest in the capital, there'd be a very cumbersome type of application process and everything. These assets are getting shoved out day by day, and loans are coming to commercial papers not being renewed. I mean, the commercial paper market, when that dries up, that's just like sucking the blood out of the economic body of the United States, and that's happening. So I would say that an RFC-like thing might make sense. I probably would do it myself, but I don't think trying to combine that with what's going through now. I think what's needed now is liquidity.
All right. There are those who, you just said you would do it yourself. There are those who believe, and it has been suggested, that this is the time for Warren Buffett to answer the call of his government and a country that's been very good to him. I mean, what are you prepared to do yourself beyond run Berkshire Hathaway well?
That's my job, but any time I can be of help to the government in terms of giving advice. I've given a little advice, actually.
Yes,
most of it, some of it gets ignored when it really counts. But anyway, I am obviously willing to do that. I'm here tonight talking about this, for that reason. It isn't going to do anything for Berkshire Hathaway. Well, that isn't really true. I mean, anything that enables this economy to run in the manner that it should. I mean, we've got the same plants out there we had 2 years ago. We've got the houses. We've got people that are more productive than they've ever been in the history of this country. We've got a wonderful economic formula in this country. But right now, it's been brought to a halt by some events that, well, it's the deleveraging that's going on right now that has caused the credit crisis.
I mentioned earlier in this introduction to you, if you read your letters to your stockholders, which you write and Carol Loomis edits every year, and you think of your sister as the person you're talking to, trying to explain.
Two sisters, yeah, right. Bertie adores.
You have talked about derivatives. Derivatives are in part at the core of this problem, yes?
AIG would be doing fine today. It was one of the 10 largest companies in the United States in terms of market value, over $200 billion, the most respected insurer and everything in the world. If they'd never heard of the word derivatives, they'd be doing fine. Everybody going to work in the morning, and they would have no troubles. But it was very easy to do because very tempting to write numbers on little pieces of paper, and you can kind of report the profit you want to, and there's no limit on it. I mean, there's no capital requirements to it or anything of the sort. And basically, I said they were possibly financial weapons of mass destruction, and they have been. I mean, they destroyed AIG. They certainly contributed to the destruction of Bear Stearns and Lehman, although Lehman had other problems too.
Yeah. I'm interested in this because people are asking themselves, how did people get away with murder here? Were there people who simply gamed the system and took advantage and made huge amounts of profit, and we had excesses that inevitably led to where we are today?
Well, we had all of that. But I would say the biggest single cause was that we had an incredible residential real estate bubble. I mean, you can go back to tulip bulbs in Holland 400 years ago. Yeah. The human beings going through combinations of fear, greed, and all of that sort of thing, their behavior can lead to bubbles. And it may have had an internet bubble at one time, and you've had a farmland bubble in the Midwest, which resulted in all kinds of tragedy in the early 80s. But we've had 300 million Americans, their lending institutions, their government, their media, all believed that house prices were going to go up consistently. And that got built into a $20 trillion residential home market. Lending was done based on it, and everybody did a lot of foolish things. And where people really behaved in a fraudulent way or something, we'll go back and find the culprits later on. But that really isn't the problem we have. I mean, that's where it came from, though. We leveraged up, and if you have a 20% fall in the value of a $20 trillion asset, that's $4 trillion. And when $4 trillion losses land in the wrong part of this economy, it can gum up the whole place.
And it continues with respect to the housing market.
It continues.
And some will argue that we have to do something about that in terms of the long-term recovery of the American economy.
Well, there's no question we have an excess stock. The good thing is we have household formation in this country. We have a country where, I don't know whether it's 1 million households a year or more, but get formed. So we can eat off an inventory. But the inventory is too big, and house prices just soared beyond reason in many places, and they got financed in silly ways, and people lied about loans. All kinds of excesses entered into it. But that is that is the single biggest cause of why we are here.
And should wise people have known better?
Well, people always should know better. I mean, people